So there's a couple NFL players dealing with off-the-field issues right now that need to try and tread lightly because their job could potentially be on the line if they aren't careful. And while I will quickly admit one player's issues are nowhere as serious as the other, training camp is right around the corner, and the last thing any team wants at this point in time is more drama off the field. So I've got to talk about that. A longtime linebacker hanging up the cleats, Adrian Peterson, back in the news for not great reasons, and more right after. Alright, first up, former Jets and Ravens linebacker CJ Mosley is calling it a career, officially retiring yesterday on his 33rd birthday. Mosley was a first-round pick by the Ravens back in 2014 and was an impact player right away. He made 4 All-Pro teams during his 5 seasons in Baltimore before signing a massive 5-year, $85 million deal with the Jets in 2019. The start of his Jets tenure didn't exactly go to plan. He played in just 2 games in 2019 as he was dealing with a major groin injury. Then he opted to sit out the COVID year in 2020. So in 2 seasons, he played just 2 games, but he came back strong, leading the team in tackles the next 3 seasons while making another All-Pro team in 2022. Sadly, though, turf toe and then a neck injury derailed his 2024 campaign as he played in only 4 games. Then the Jets released him back in March of this past offseason, and with Mosley now being 33 years old, coming off of an injury-riddled season, the timing of this makes a whole lot of sense. We've now seen a handful of pretty good players hang up the cleats this offseason. You can see the full list right here, starting with Mosley, but then there's guys like Derek Carr, Julio Jones, Patrick Peterson, and the list goes on, and sadly, is part of the business with the NFL. After all, there's a reason why the NFL also stands for not for long. Now, as for the Jets and how CJ's retirement affects them, it appears the veteran Jamien Sherwood will be the one to take over Mosley's role. Sherwood filled in for Mosley last year when he missed time with those injuries, and he played well enough for the Jets to give him a 3-year, $45 million contract extension. They also have the veteran Quincy Williams holding it down in the linebacker room, plus they drafted Francisco Maui Noah in the 5th round back in April. Their defense wasn't horrid last year. They ranked 19th in points allowed, but they were 5th in yards allowed, which is pretty good. Now they've got themselves a new defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn, a new defensive coordinator in Steve Wilks, and they'll be looking to get this team to the playoffs for the first time since 2010, with Justin Fields at the helm trying to get to the playoffs for the first time in his career. All right, next up, we've got to talk about the Shedeur Sanders speeding ticket incident from earlier this week because in and of itself, it's not the biggest deal in the world as a standalone incident. Nobody was hurt and no damage was done, but this is actually the second time this month that Shedeur has been pulled over for speeding. The most recent incident from this week, he was clocked going 41 miles per hour over the 60 mile per hour speed limit in a Ram TRX pickup truck, so 101 miles per hour this time, but then just a couple weeks ago, Shedeur was pulled over for doing 91 in a 65 mile per hour zone. Then, according to local court records, Sanders failed to appear for an arraignment for that citation this Monday, and he has to pay several fines that are but mere pennies to this guy compared to the million or so he's making per year on his rookie contract. So no worries there from a financial standpoint, but what he should be worried about is how this could affect his standing with the team. Do I think this has him an instant cut candidate or anything crazy like that? Not at all, but for a guy that initially looked to be 4th out of a 4-way QB battle, you really want to create as little as off-the-field drama as humanly possible. The further down a team's depth chart you are, and maybe more importantly, the less money you cost them overall, the less a team is willing to put up with stuff like this over time. Let's take Deshaun Watson, for example. The guy has a fully guaranteed contract, and Cleveland gave up a plethora of draft picks to go and get him, so they're going to put up with a hell of a lot with this guy because they're stuck with him. That's honestly a very horrible comparison because Shedeur Sanders has a couple of speeding tickets. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing like that was involved. No injuries happened, nothing, just speeding tickets. Now, was it stupid? A bad idea? Sure. But again, this is very minor in comparison to what Deshaun Watson was accused of doing. My point is, expensive players have a much longer leash, and Shedeur needs to relax a little bit off the field. For what it's worth, Shedeur did kind of own up to his poor decisions yesterday at Browns tight end David Njoku's celebrity softball game.
You know, I made some wrong choices personally, and I got owned up to them. I made some, not great choices. I learned.
We're from the real people.
I learned.
So he was laughing about it, but he did kind of say, hey, I made some dumb decisions and need to be better, so that's something at least. The Browns themselves are also obviously aware of both incidents, and team spokesman Peter John Baptiste said Shedeur is, quote, taking care of the tickets. But this is where I want to get your thoughts on the situation. Do you think this is a bigger deal and could affect Shedeur standing with the team, or nah, he's fine as long as he doesn't do it again and still has a potential chance to be the starter, which some really do believe could happen as OTAs went on and Shedeur started to impress? Let me know either way in the comments down below because I'd love to read your thoughts on this one. Next up, another player who recently had a run-in with the law, albeit a much more serious one, is Texan safety Jimmie Ward. Before I get to the situation, Ward signed a one-year extension with the Texans last offseason and is set to become a free agent after this year. He's also working back from foot surgery to address an injury from last season and hasn't participated in OTAs or minicamp, but was expected to be back by training camp at some point. However, his status with the team could be a bit up in the air right now because he was arrested last week and charged with felony assault and family violence after an alleged altercation took place at his home in Magnolia, Texas. What was being alleged is that Ward assaulted, strangled, and threatened his fiancée. From there, an emergency protective order was filed at her request, and Ward was arrested and then released shortly after on $30,000 bail. He initially had a court date set for July 16th, but today we learned that it's been amended or rescheduled to August 13th. In a statement to the media, Ward's lawyer spoke out saying, "We believe that Jimmie will be vindicated. We just ask that the public reserve judgment so that we can show everyone that the Jimmie Ward they all know is the same person and did not do this." Well, he's not wrong about waiting to reserve judgment, even though initial allegations like this can still cast quite the shadow on somebody's reputation. But like with Xavier Worthy, for example, in his situation from earlier this offseason, letting the legal process play out first is the best way to go about it for sure. With the legal situation going on, the Texans will most likely let everything play out first, but they could also move on from him if they needed to or wanted to. They would only have to eat $4.6 million to do so, so it's not the end of the world for them from a financial standpoint. All right, I can't lie, this video is starting to feel like an episode of TMZ, but we've got to talk about this pretty crazy clip going around. It went viral yesterday of former NFL running back Adrian Peterson throwing hands at a poker game. This actually took place back in May 27th to be exact, at a social club in Houston, but the video started making its rounds yesterday. Basically, Peterson got into it with another poker player over something involving the game, and the argument then escalated to the two of them throwing hands. Not gonna lie, AP definitely took the worst of it despite having a clear size and you would think athleticism advantage. After all this went down though, AP said he regretted the incident and said the other guy is actually a friend of his, and since this happened, the two of them have reconciled. The police were never called or anything like that, so it's not really a serious matter, but of course, it's gone viral because of who Peterson is. Sadly, AP's had quite a few issues since last playing in the NFL back in 2021. Last year, he was court-ordered to forfeit over $12 million in assets to pay off loan debt. He was also just arrested back in April for a DWI, and then a few weeks after that is when this fight occurred at a poker event. And if all that wasn't enough, the guy got knocked out by Le'Veon Bell at a celebrity boxing match in 2022, so it's safe to say it's been a rough few years for the guy who's arguably one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys for today. Hopefully news stays rather minimal for the next month because most teams and players are off until the start of training camp. But this is also sadly when players do get in trouble and we start getting reports like this going around. But hey, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments down below, and with that, I'll see y'all next time.